afternoon. Welcome to the RNN Newcast. Today, we are going to talk about the racial, social, and culture anxieties happening in the 1970s. We have our reporter Randy talking about the disasters that are currently happening.
My name is Randy. I'm reporting you live about one of the most greatest tragedies that happened during this time period. One of the most greatest tragedies that happened during this time period was the Love Canal site. The Love Canal site became an economic waste dump after the economy declined its project. The residents of the Love Canal waste dump sold the Love Canal to a school, district, and a community was built on top of it. The Love Canal site was sold for $1. The government plan was to build it on top of 21,000 tons of industrial toxic waste. Residents began to complain about large booms and chemical smells. There were about 88 specific chemicals underground. 11 of them were causing cancer. During the winter time, the Love Canal site raised the water table and caused chemicals to leak into basements, backyards, and playgrounds. President Jimmy Carter had to declare a state of emergency. During the first two housing roads at the Love Canal site had to be evacuated. Fences were put up. People on the side of the fence had to be evacuated, while the other side, half of the side at the Love Canal stayed. The government says they were safe. 21,000 tons of total toxic waste was in total. 3 years later, President Jimmy Carter declared a second state of emergency when families were relocated. The government bought the site worth $15 million. Hooker Chemical was ordered to pay the restitution in the amount of $129 million. The amount had to be paid by the toxic waste company. There were a total of about 939 homes that were relocated. The total of relocation cost was about $17 million. After the incident with the Love Canal disaster, the government had ordered the EPA to locate the waste dump all around the U.S. and clean the economic waste dump. Meanwhile, in Parkville, Toronto, one of the most scariest debacles happened in the 3 Mile Island. During the March 28th, the 3 Mile Island Unit 2 breaker partially melted down. The accident began at 4 a.m. on Wednesday, March 28th, when the power plant experienced failure. Either a mechanical or electrical failure prevented the main feed water pumps component from sending rotators to the steam generators. There were a bunch of health effects that happened during the 3 Mile Island accident. About 2 million people around TMI2 during the accident are estimated to have received an average radiation dose of only about 1 milligram above the visual background dose. In the 3 months during the accident, the effects from radiations on humans, animals, and plant life in the area, none could be directly correlated to the accident. Thousands of samples of air, water, soil, milk, vegetation, and foodstuff were collected by the government agencies monitoring that area. There are about 2 universities that was really affected by the accident. It was Columbia University and the University of Pittsburgh. There were serious damage to the reactor, the actual effects on physical health and individual of the environment. After the impact of the combination of personal error and design defiances and a component failures caused TMI accident, which changed both the nuclear industry and the NRC. There were major changes after the remodeling of the power plant. The upgrading changes strengthening a plan of design and equipment requirements. They changed the role of human performance in plant safety, and they did operator, trader, and staff requirements. They had to strengthen and reorganize enforcing staff in separate office with the NRC. With the remodeling to not prevent another accident, they had to share information with the other countries in numbers of important technical areas. After everything that happened with the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant, with the remodeling, and the government had to make a drastic change around the United States for there not to be any accidents to occur again. Now reporting live to Nayeli.
Thank you, Randy. Nayeli Alvarez here, and welcome to NNR. We'll be talking about women's rights today. On August 26, 1970, women strikes. About 50,000 women were involved in New York City, one of the biggest rallies. Little by little, streets were packed by people. Women refused to cook and clean. Instead, they joined these events. Posters were made everywhere. Speeches were made by leaders such as Betty Friedan. The 19th Amendment was passed. Friedan announced that this was a success. Now with our reporter, Natalie.
Ashley, and I'm here reporting to talk about the 1970s music. In the 1970s, there was different type of music that was hitting, such as funk, soul, R&B, pop, hard rock, soft rock, and disco, and they all played a part in different parts of the world. For example, in North America, there was a rise of disco. In Europe, there was a rise of Euro disco. In the Western, rock music played an important part. In Latin America, the popularity adapted to the hippie music. In Africa and Nigeria, they listened to mostly the genre known as Afrobeat. At the end of the 1970s, there was a big problem that the classics started to lose their momentum due to hip-hop coming into place. Some of the best rock and roll of all times were recorded in the 1970s, such as Baroquewood by Heart, Jet Airline by Steve Miller, Old Time Rock and Roll by Bob. Thank you guys for watching the RNN Newcast, talking about the 1970s. See you guys next time.